Number 14, printed in Part B of House Report Number 118-559, offered by Mr. Gosar of Arizona.
Pursuant to House Resolution 1316, the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Gosar, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in strong support of my Amendment 14 to the fiscal year 2025 State Foreign Operations Bill. My amendment prohibits funds for foreign military sales to Ukraine. The Foreign Military Sales, or FMS program, is a form of security assistance authorized by the Arms Export Control Act. As of June 7th, the United States has spent nearly $600 million in active government-to-government sales cases with Ukraine under the FMS program. The United States should not approve of foreign military sales to authoritarian foreign countries like Ukraine. Ukraine has arrested priests, raided a monastery, suspended 11 opposition political parties, and consolidated all television platforms into a state single channel. The country does not even allow presidential elections. Even more shocking is that the FMS program may be used to supply Ukraine with American weapons that can be used to strike inside Russia. Last May, the State Department approved a possible emergency foreign military sale to Ukraine of high-mobility artillery rockets, or HIMARS. Concerningly, just last month, an American-supplied HIMARS rocket system was reported to be likely used in an attack inside of Russia. I, for one, would rather not have American weapons being used on a territory or a country we are not even at war with. President Eisenhower once said that, quote, "A vital element in keeping the peace is our military establishment," end of quote. We cannot keep the peace with weapons of our military establishment being wielded against a third party, against another great power. If you truly support global democracy and liberty, end the foreign military sales to Ukraine. And with that, I ask my colleagues to vote yes, and with that, I reserve.
The gentleman from Arizona reserves. What purpose does the gentleman? For what purpose, gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I rise to claim the time in opposition.
Gentleman is recognized.
So, Mr. Chairman, we use the term here, my friend, all the time, but I will tell you that the gentleman from Arizona and I are friends, and I have great respect for him. But I do have to claim the time in opposition. So Congress recently provided $1.6 billion in foreign military financing for Ukraine, not in this bill, that was already done, and other countries impacted by the situation in Ukraine. So while foreign military financing funds in this bill are not designated for Ukraine, there aren't any, let me tell you why I still respectfully have to stand in opposition. I think this just sends a pretty bad message during a time of active war. I think it would be a monumental mistake, potentially emboldening our enemies, including Russia, and sending a dangerous signal of the United States' weakness, something that, unfortunately, this administration does every single day, and lack of resolve to others around the world, including potentially communist China and other adversaries. So I will also note that House Republicans successfully secured language in the fiscal year 24 State and Foreign Operations bills that brings unprecedented transparency and oversight requirements on all assistance going to Ukraine, which I think is a very important thing to do, and I think all of us agree to that. So I want to repeat, there are no FMF funds in this bill for Ukraine, but it goes to, again, because the only FMF that we have in this bill goes to other key partners, and I mentioned that, like Taiwan. And so, but I just think that a prohibition potentially sends a very bad message. There are no funds, but I think this would send a very bad message. And so I have great respect for, again, somebody who actually is a friend of mine. You know, we're good friends, but I respectfully have to oppose this amendment, and I would reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Florida reserves. The gentleman from Arizona is recognized.
I thank the chairman. And yes, we are very good friends. I will tell you once again, saying this out loud and putting it in writing is very important, because this is going to go to the Senate. And the Senate's going to have an objective. And when you put something down on a piece of paper, they're going to have to take notice of this. And so from that standpoint, that's why I want this in this place. It may not have a place yet in this bill, but the Senate also has to know the intentions of this House. And the House has its own independent acclamations. Now, I got to tell you, we're a third party, in an unending war? You gotta be kidding me. This is, I thought we were the only ones who could declare war. The House, the Congress. So I have to object to my dear friend and say, listen, I would like this to be put in here. And with that, I will yield back and ask everybody to vote for this amendment.
The gentleman from Arizona yields back. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from California.
The gentlewoman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in strong opposition to this amendment. Russia's brutal and unprovoked attack in Ukraine is not just a threat to Ukraine and its neighbors, but to the world, including our own country. If Russia succeeds in its aggression, other unprovoked attacks are inevitable. Ukraine's democracy is being undermined every single day. Entire cities have been demolished. Women and girls are being sexually abused by Russian soldiers, and children are being kidnapped. Hospitals and schools, which should be safe havens, are being intentionally attacked. Thousands of innocent children and their families have been brutally murdered. Millions of Ukrainians have been forced to flee their country. Now, I have visited Ukraine, and I immediately recognize the love of the Ukrainian people for their country and their democracy. Since the war broke out, I've been to Poland, and I've met with Ukrainians to hear firsthand about the dire situation that they face amidst Russian aggression. I've talked with civil society organizations funded by the United States who, facing danger and violence, are supporting refugees, vulnerable people, women, and children. I was deeply moved by their stories and their commitment. Colleagues, we must be able to ensure that Ukraine has the funding and support it needs to defend itself, and that vulnerable people continue to receive life-saving assistance. I urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman from California yields back. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Yield back.
The gentleman from Florida yields back. Now the question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Arizona. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
Mr. Chairman?
For what purpose, gentleman from Arizona?
Yeah, I request